Everybody, I just want to remind you, have you all done your training presentation with Julia?
We've
Yeah.
had confirmation.
Right, let's get started. Membership of today's committee. I know that Councillor Armour is a bit unwell today, so he won't be coming. Everybody else is as printed. Right, minutes of the previous meeting, can we pass those as a true record? Cool. Right, declarations and interests lobbying. I'll start off with Councillor Sokol.
None, Chair.
Councillor Patterson.
None, Chair.
Councillor Pinnett.
None, Chair.
Councillor Davies.
Some emails from resident Simon Baxter with regards to item 11, page 23. No advice given, just acknowledged.
Yeah. Councillor Thompson.
None, Chair.
Thank you. Any public questions?
No questions, Chair.
Any deputations and petitions?
No deputations.
Right. We had a bit of a... Well, it wasn't our fault. As bus driver didn't turn up. So we did our site visit down at Woodhead Road in Holmfirth. The one at Southgate, I'd already passed it an hour before, so I think we all know pretty much where it is and what they're doing. But if we need to go at some other time, we can do. Right, item 9. This is a review of the planning appeals, and it's Ellie.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. My name is Ellie Wood, and I am a planner within the West Area team. Here is an overview of the appeal decisions received between January and December 2021. Overall, we have received 78 decisions, of which 74% have been dismissed. This is shown on the pie chart on screen. 3 appeals were related to tree work applications, of which all were dismissed. 2 applications for an award of costs were lodged, whereby 1 has been awarded. This is the Wesley Avenue site, which was decided by Huddersfield Subcommittee. Of the 78 appeals, 4 were against non-determination. 67 were determined by officers, whereby 53 were dismissed. That's a percentage of 79%. 7 applications were determined by a committee, of which 4 were dismissed. The remaining 3 committee decisions were upheld, and these were all contrary to officer recommendation. Having compared this data to that of 2020, there has been a slight reduction in the number of appeals dismissed from 83% to 74%. However, it is important to note that Kirklees are still above the national average. For example, nationally, within a 24-month period, 1.8% of major applications were overturned at appeal, compared to Kirklees, which only had 1.3%. In terms of minor applications nationally, 1% were overturned at appeal, compared to Kirklees at 0.5%. Lastly, in terms of compliance, 93 enforcement notices have been served within the same time period, of which 10 appeals were received and 9 were dismissed, and the enforcement notice upheld in favour of the council. This equates to 90%. Does anyone have any questions?
Mr. Chair, can I ask? Still quite few percentage appeals have been allowed. Yeah, there must be some award against the council. Yeah. So, do we know how much? Or they don't want to tell how much the award was awarded against the council on those applications?
Ellie Matthias, do you know how much money we've lost, if indeed any?
Well, there was one award of costs, and the figures being negotiated at the minute, and that was for a written representation appeal. That was the Wesley Avenue housing application. I'm not in a position to say how much the award of cost was, but it will be a 5-figure sum. So it is a noticeable cost to the council. but an award of costs is not a reason to not make a decision and even a refusal. So apart from that one, there aren't many, Chair. Thank you.
Right, thanks Matthias. Is there any more questions, observations for Ellie? No? Right, thanks Ellie for that.
Thank you, Chair.
Right, applications, page 23. This is Woodhead Road at Holmfirth and it's Victor.
Thank you, Chair. Victor Grayson, Development Management Master Planner in the Majors and Minerals team. This is an application for full planning permission for a residential development of 61 age-restricted apartments at the site of Prickledon Mills, Holmfirth. Some members may recall previous applications relating to this site, although as previous proposals were for a smaller number of residential units, those previous applications were considered by the Huddersfield Planning Subcommittee. The site is located to the southwest of Holmfirth town centre. It's a valley bottom site of an irregular shape, approximately 1.1 hectares in size, located mostly on the north bank of the River Holme, although the site, as you can see here, members, also includes land on the south bank of the river. The site is within the Holmfirth Conservation Area, and there are two Grade 2 listed buildings to the north of the application site at 25 and 27 Woodhead Road. TPO tree preservation orders protect trees to the south, and the site, the river and much of the valley bottom are subject to various ecological designations. The site was cleared following the approval in 2013 of a previous application for residential development at the site. The site's mill pond survives. Access into the site is available from a narrow lane off Woodhead Road and from Lower Mill Lane. Surrounding uses are predominantly residential, although a heating and plumbing business occupies premises immediately to the northeast. To the west is the relatively recent Perseverance Mill or Perseverance Place development, where works are ongoing. In these four photographs, going clockwise from the top left, first we see a view of the premises occupied by the plumbing and heating business, and then moving clockwise around the screen, we see a view looking across the site, looking west. Then we see a view looking down onto the site and the site's mill pond from a vantage point close to the rear of 29 Woodhead Road. And then finally a view looking down the lane from Woodhead Road, and members can see on the left hand side of that image the dwellings of Lower Mill Lane. In the smaller image on this slide, we see the challenging access onto and from Woodhead Road that exists at the moment, where that hoarding or that sign is located, and then also a photo montage of the view from the south side of the River Holme from the terminus of Lower Mill Lane, which members saw the site from today. As regards what's proposed, 61 apartments are proposed for age-restricted accommodation. 59 of those would be two-bedroom apartments and 2 would be three-bedroom apartments. A ground floor gym and other residence facilities are also proposed, as is a basement or an undercroft car park. 78 on-site car parking spaces are proposed, some in that basement, some at surface level. Moving clockwise around the site, starting with the residence lounge, that would be a single-storey freestanding structure on the north side of the retained mill pond. Then we see blocks C and D, those would be part 4, part 5 stories in height. Block E is the smaller footprint of the buildings that would be adjacent to the river. That block E would be 4 stories, plus it would have a visible undercroft story facing the river, and it would also have a 5-story tower. Blocks A and B, also adjacent to the river, would be part 5 plus the undercroft story, and part 6 stories in height. Space between the blocks would be landscaped. Works are proposed to the mill pond, including lowering the water level and creating a terrace on its eastern edge. A freestanding electricity substation is proposed. Vehicular access will be provided via Lower Mill Lane and via a new bridge across the river. And emergency access would be provided off the access lane off Woodhead Road next to the premises occupied by the Heating and Plumbing Company. A riverside walk is proposed from Lower Mill Lane, which would then cross the river via a new footbridge to run alongside the mill pond, between the mill pond and the river, then crossing the river again via a second footbridge towards the Perseverance Place development to the west. The elevations at the top of the slide are what would face the river, and therefore what would be visible from Lower Mill Lane. And then the elevations at the bottom of the slide show the northwest elevations facing properties on Woodhead Road. Natural stone and slate is proposed by the applicant. Plan sections and elevations originally submitted by the applicant didn't clearly show how the proposed development would relate to its context. Also, as members saw today, that context is quite complicated due to the irregular shape of the site, the various levels that exist around the site, and the various proximities of existing buildings and their gardens and habitable room windows to the site's boundaries. So I've therefore put together this slide, which is an ordnance survey plan overlaid with the proposed layout. In this slide, I've also picked out some of the existing dwellings surrounding the site to illustrate the proposal's relationships with them. And in respect of existing dwellings to the north on Woodhead Road, those relationships are considered to be problematic. As detailed in the committee report, due to their heights, habitable room windows and proximity to existing dwellings, it is considered that the proposed development would unacceptably affect the amenities of residents of those properties in relation to privacy, outlook and natural light. Local residents have objected to the proposed development on amenity impact grounds. Furthermore, the scale of development proposed raises significant concerns in relation to townscape and river setting, impacts upon the character and appearance of the Holmfirth Conservation Area, and impacts upon the settings of the two adjacent listed buildings. Objections to the proposed development have been received from the Council's Conservation and Design team and Historic England. These two images show in the top left, firstly, the 6-storey northwest elevation of Block A. The river would be behind that building in that view. And the other image is the southwest elevation of that building, that proposed building with the mill pond retained in front of it. It should be noted that aspects of the proposed design are of merit, including these aspects of merit include the use of natural stone and the landscaped areas between the blocks, although these would not be open to the public. However, while this development may be entirely acceptable in another location where the site's context is different, it is not recommended that this scale of development be accepted at this site. Another recommended reason for refusal relates to parking. A shortfall of 4 spaces is proposed, and in light of information provided by the applicant yesterday, this shortfall may in fact be greater, as it's not yet certain that 47 usable spaces will be provided at basement level due to possible locations of columns. Regarding drainage, the proposed development attracted strong objections from the Environment Agency and the lead local flood authority. The applicant has attempted to address the concerns, and a revised flood risk assessment and related information has recently been submitted. However, in the absence of further comments from those consultees, officers cannot confirm to members that the development will be adequately and safely drained and that flood risk has been adequately addressed. The 5th and final recommended reason for refusal relates to the absence of a completed Section 106 agreement, which would have secured affordable housing, an off-site open space contribution and other provisions intended to mitigate the impacts of the development. Other planning matters are considered acceptable, or outstanding concerns could have been addressed at condition stage. The applicant has yesterday stated that all apartments would be NDSS compliant. The proposals have been assessed having regard to the previous approval of a 46-unit residential scheme at this site, work on which has commenced. Therefore, that scheme represents a fallback that the applicant could carry on implementing. The current scheme, however, is larger and taller and would have different and greater impacts, such that refusal of permission is considered appropriate. Regard has also been had to the public benefits of the proposed development, including the reuse of a vacant, accessible, untidy brownfield site, the provision of housing, local spending, biodiversity net gain, and the provision of a riverside walk. However, it is considered that these benefits do not outweigh the harm that the proposed development would cause. The applicant has submitted amended drawings and has requested that a decision on the application be deferred. However, the amendments do not address all the concerns. They have not been accepted for formal consideration and they have not been put to public consultation. Following a refusal, the applicant would have an opportunity to resubmit, and it's not recommended that a decision be deferred. Given this assessment and given the 53 representations from local residents and the comments of the Home Valley Parish Council, Councillor Crook and former Councillor Patrick, it is recommended that planning permission be refused. Thank you, Chair.
We've got one speaker, Hamish Gledhill. You have 3 minutes starting from now.
Thank you, Chair. As you've heard, there is already an approved scheme for this site. However, this proposed scheme provides major flood mitigation improvements. The approved scheme sees the loss of floodplain with no flood mitigation. This scheme will lower the water level in the mill pond to provide flood storage, an approach which has been agreed with the Environment Agency. The lowering of the mill pond provides new habitats for insects and wildlife. This scheme achieves more than a 10% net gain in biodiversity enhancements, and the approved scheme provides nothing like this. This scheme includes 2 footbridges over the River Home to allow the public to walk along the riverbank. The approved scheme requires the public to walk through the car park. This scheme requires no fill to be brought onto the site. The approved scheme requires 3,400 cubic metres of material to be brought onto the site, resulting in 170 20-tonne trucks travelling through the centre of Home Firth. This scheme provides better open space, landscaping and amenity due to the underground car parking. This scheme has electric charging points, cycle storage, it will have solar panels, air source heat pumps, and the applicant has a pre-application inquiry with the Environment Agency to explore the hydropower from the river so the building can be powered completely by renewable energy sources. If the Council is serious about reducing carbon emissions and addressing the climate change emergency, you should defer this planning application so that the information provided to the Council is properly assessed rather than rushing to refuse this application. The second point is the time delays with this application. They're outside the applicant's control. Since the applicant played for pre-application advice from the Environment Agency 18 months ago, we've been waiting for various modelling information. The last information only came back 3 weeks ago. The applicant should not be punished for these delays that are out of his control. Finally, the Council acknowledged they overlooked 22 drawings amending the scheme and other documents that were submitted back in March. There is no dispute that the amended drawings would have been accepted by the Council and consulted upon had they not been overlooked months ago. Disregarding the amended submission causes huge prejudice to the applicant, which should be considered before this application is determined. The applicant has always said there should be further consultation on the amended scheme and offered an extension of time to allow such consultation to take place, even though the amendments were submitted months ago. It is unreasonable for officers to rely on the lack of consultation as a reason to reject the amendments. The conclusions about the acceptability of the amendments have been reached without the benefit of key consultees such as Historic England, the public, or any further discussion with the applicant. We urge you to defer this application to allow proper consultation to ensure that neither the public nor key consultees nor the applicant will be prejudiced, and to allow all the benefits that the scheme could bring to come to fruition. Thank you, Chair.
Right, members, it's over to you. Yes, Councillor Davis.
Thanks, and thanks, officers, for both the site visit today and obviously the presentation with the details. Certainly, from my perspective, and I live, I suppose I should declare interest. I live in School, so I live just outside Home Firth. Absolutely, I would support developing this brownfield site. That's clearly was something that was decided previously anyway. I think it is in an ideal position in terms of having a community that's able to commute through walking down the river into the town, and obviously there would be an economic gain for the town as well. So I think that goes without saying as something which is hugely positive about a development here. However, as the fundamental point for me, and it's been outlined very clearly, is the scale of this development. It is absolutely, for me, not acceptable in terms of the impact in the area, particularly the impact on residents nearby, and certainly the character there. I know that many people will say, well, it's a mill town, and there was a mill there before, but the previous mill was much lower rise, and certainly it wouldn't have caused the same issues as this in terms of the residents. So for me, that is very much the fundamental point. There are a number of the reasons which I won't go into because the officers have outlined that very much as already. The only other thing I would add, which certainly again gives me great concern, is the Section 106 and affordable housing. We have a real lack of affordable housing, not across Kirklees, but in particular in the rural areas. And it is absolutely supportable to have the 1-2 bedrooms approach, which we know we've got a huge shortage, but not to have the Section 106 in place with affordable housing, again, does not give me confidence in this application whatsoever. So for me, it's very fundamental. It's about the scale of this, and for me, I see no reason why the previous approved application could not be used and they could not move forward with that. So certainly, I'm not supporting this application.
Thanks, Paul. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. I'll have to excuse my ignorance in the first instance, but the brownfield site, what was on there before? Does anybody know what scale was the building that was on there before?
Through you, Chair. Yes, the mill buildings that stood on that site weren't demolished that long ago, possibly 8 to 9 years ago, after the previous approval of planning permission in 2013. You can actually see them on Google Street View if you scroll back to 8 to 9 years ago. But basically, they were single-story or 2-story mill buildings. Obviously, they were in employment use, so 1 story of that kind of use is taller than a typical residential story. But yeah, 2-story block faced the river, close to where the committee bus stopped today. And then there were single-story factory-type buildings with the quite characteristic standard north light windows on part of the site.
Go on.
I haven't finished yet, Chair. It was a question that was leading on from just getting some information. So, what I'm confused at, reference to scale, is some of the other buildings that we passed in through planning reference to scale and obscuring vision of local properties. I'm not sure that we've got any continuity as far as that's concerned. We seem to object to one and then pass others. So I remember not that very long ago in Batley, a 3-story building being built straight facing a row of tourist houses. But because it was deemed as a benefit to the local community, then it was passed, and that was on Grade 2 listed land, not just on brownfield. So I'm not sure that there's a real strong objection as far as the scale of the property. And the other thing that I'm curious about is the fact that this is several times now that I've heard of it being thrown back at the developers at the last minute, and reference to the 106s and having things to make ready fairly quickly. And I think that we should maybe take that into consideration and take it back to planning of what's actually happening. I've been helping a couple of local developers trying to get things through that have been stuck in the mire for quite a considerable amount of time with planning. So that's another issue that I've got with this. And then asking the developers to come forward and saying that it's an objection because of the 106. Now, if the 106 hasn't been forthcoming because of their fault, then fair enough. But if it is a planning thing, then we should take it into consideration. So the scale of the buildings, then we know, as far as planning is concerned, that these type of buildings have got to be profitable at the end of the day. Otherwise, nothing's got to get developed. And to ask them to scale down is okay as long as they're still profitable and that there is a 106 contribution that's worthwhile. So, it's almost, I'm giving you statements rather than questions and answers, but it does seem that we seem to be cherry-picking somewhat what we deem as favourable and not. And it seems to be a decent project, even though obviously the parking isn't adequate enough, and there are some things that should be deferred here. I think parking's one of them, the confirmation of the 106 is the other. But apart from that, I'm quite happy with the project, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I've been on the site visit this morning, and I've been before when the previous application was there for 46 apartment there, yeah, just years back, yeah. Chair, while I actually welcome the age-restricted apartment on there, which we needed for the age community, yeah. But at the same time, it doesn't mean I support the application because there are so many shortcomings on this application. The increase of number from 46 to 61 of this apartment is quite nearly 1/3, yeah. I don't think it's acceptable. They need to come down the number of those apartments. Yeah. Again, the size, yeah, and design, I don't think it's acceptable. Again, I agree with my two colleagues. Section 106, yeah, affordable house. Why we let them go without any affordable houses? Yeah, we need to look into that. Again, I think, as Councillor Davies have said, this site need to be developed because it looks like a derelict at the moment, but that doesn't mean we accept this application as it is now. So I think, I don't know, Chair, if we defer this application, the application will come with some kind of improvement. If we defer it, if we refuse it, I think the applicant will consider it amendment very seriously. Yeah. Thank you. These are my views. I listen to other members what they say. I go along. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Going back to what Councillor Davies said, I think there is no argument to my mind that the redevelopment of this site is really quite important. And in theory, the proposed use is generally most acceptable because there is a shortage of such accommodation in most parts of Kirklees, and I guess in the rural parts of Kirklees even more so. So that being said, and also the fact that there is a pre-existing permission on the site, albeit without the many things that Mr. Gledhill's talked about in terms of the environmental aspects of this this application, I just think that in this location, what we're looking at here, and as far as we were able to visualise when we were on the site, is too much. Firstly, given that the buildings that were there before were, I was going to say more domestic scale almost, but fairly low-rise mill buildings. Not like some others that certainly this committee has seen in the Holme Valley. This is going onto a completely different level, and it does seem to me that it will cause some annoyance to some local residents because the buildings were in their eye line, if you like, when in fact the mill building that was there before was never in their eye line anyway. I think you have to be very careful when you redevelop sites like this, that you don't go overboard. Sorry, there's a rather strange metaphor, that is. I don't mean it like that. That you don't build up too high in order to maximise the value out of the site. Without any evidence to the contrary, that changing from 46 to 61 is absolutely essential to get the proper value out of the site. I would certainly go along with the officer's recommendation, and I'm quite prepared to move that recommendation. I think it's important, though, that we make it clear that the principle of a development on this site is acceptable. It's just got to be right, and I will leave it at that. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, thanks, Chair. I mean, I haven't got much to add to what people have already said. I mean, basically, we're looking at an additional 15 properties on top of what has already been agreed. But having said that, we're not getting any Section 106 social housing out of it, which doesn't seem right. I mean, if we're increasing the size and therefore the profitability, then there must be some room for additional 106 contributions. It does, I mean, I've certainly complained about buildings along the canal bottom or the valley bottoms being overbearing before now, and I think I would go along with it. what has been said in terms of the height of this and the overbearing nature. I would want to see it developed, and I would like to see the original scheme developed. I mean, I suppose we've got an option, but well, the option we've got is between defer and refuse. And to be honest, I can't see that deferral particularly gives us any additional advantage that rather than refusing it. So I think I will be going along with the officer's recommendations. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. First of all, like to second Councillor Pinnock's proposal, and again to emphasise my support as well in terms of developing this site. I think it is crucial that we develop brownfield sites such as this, and I have absolutely no opposition to that. But I think a number of us said now it has to be the right development. The previous application, the previous permission is still active. I can only assume that the previous developers were happy with their return and their profit from that. I can only assume that because I haven't got those numbers. So on that basis, you know, it does, you know, you can surmise that that could be and should be a going concern to be re-evaluated, because we're certainly not starting from scratch in terms of that. So for me, absolutely support the principle of developing here, but I would second the proposal from Councillor Pinnock.
Any more comments? Right, well, it's being moved and it's being seconded to accept officer's decision of refusal, so we'll go to a vote.
So you voted on the officer's recommendation to refuse. Councillor Thompson?
Abstain.
Councillor Davies?
Accept, refuse.
Councillor Sokol?
For.
Councillor Pattison?
For.
Councillor Pinnock?
For.
Councillor Hall?
For.
That's clearly carried, Chair.
Next item, page 55, I believe. Yep. And this is Halifax Road at Hightown, and this is Callum.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. Callum Harrison, Development Management East and Case Officer for Planning Application 2022 90078 for the erection of agricultural building and demolition of existing building at Upper Blackup Farm off Halifax Road in Hightown. The site refers to existing farm holding. The farm is accessed via a steep private track from Halifax Road, which also serves a historical farmhouse. The application site is allocated within the urban green space as set out on the local plan policies map adopted 2019. The application site forms a small part of a much larger, strategically important urban green space site that extends from Cleckheaton in the west to Hightown and Liversedge in the east. The applicant is seeking permission for the erection of an agricultural building and demolition of existing buildings. The applicant states that the existing farm structures have reached the end of their life and are no longer fit for purpose for the applicant's modern farming machinery and needs. This proposal is made to replace some of the old building stock within a typical steel-framed agricultural shed with eaves heights and widths to accommodate the applicant's plant and everything associated with the existing use on site. As stated on screen, the existing building stock to be demolished represents 570 metres squared of floor space, whilst the proposed building represents 371 metres squared of floor space. The image on screen now shows the aerial imagery of the site and the proposed siting of the new building in context with the buildings to be demolished. Officers have previously entered discussion with the agent about setting the proposed building on the same site as the buildings to be demolished to the south-east on that picture. However, the applicant stated due to the land levels in that part of the site, it cannot reasonably accommodate one larger building without extensive landscape and structural works. On screen now are some images of the existing building stock. You can see that officers generally are minded to agree with the applicant that they are reaching the end of their life and not fit for modern purposes. The proposed agricultural building, as stated previously, will be rather atypical in design. The proposed building will be faced in castle boarding and concrete panels for the walls and fibre cement sheets for the roof. On screen now is an indicative layout plan of how the building will be arranged internally. The agent has shown where all the equipment will be stored alongside the haylage storage area. The applicant states that this hay storage area will allow them to increase his farm's revenue by selling more haylage in total. Officers have considered the impact on the development and the urban green space allocation. Through consultations with KC Planning Policy, officers determined that whilst the urban green space policy does not directly support a scheme of this nature, the proposed development only affects a small part of the area allocated and will have minimal impact on the wider urban green space site functionally and visually. The scheme would also result in a lesser footprint being built upon when completed given the proposed demolition. Also, the agricultural use as a whole is supported within the urban green space. Furthermore, the demolition of the several piecemeal buildings around the farm and the erection of one purpose-built structure will enable the development and diversification of the agricultural and other land-based rural business. Directly supported by paragraph 84 of the MPPF and local plan policy LP10, this stresses the importance of supporting the rural economy by stating the economic performance of the rural economy will be improved by supporting the needs of small and medium-sized enterprises, of which this is. This carries significant weight in this case. Therefore, considering the very limited harm to the urban green space and the clear benefits to the existing farm business, officers conclude that the scheme is considered acceptable and to be in accordance with the aims and objectives of the Kirklees local plan and the National Planning Policy Framework. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Callum. We've got one speaker and it's Blair Clark. You have 3 minutes starting from now.
Thank you, Chair. I came here today just to support the application what I've made for the building of the agricultural barn. We moved into the property in November 2020, where we took over a rundown farm. There's my partner and my son, who's 5-year-old. 2 of the buildings we've already had to collapse because they're very dangerous, one of them being held up by a twig from a tree. We've managed to get them collapsed now because obviously with a 5-year-old son it could be very dangerous. I need to take the farm forward by getting the agricultural barn hopefully erected so we can store feed, haylage, straw, anything we need before the costs of things rocket in the winter. The other thing is we need to get as much of our plant under cover as possible because of the theft these days. Obviously we want to make sure everything's locked away to get everything as safe as possible. The new builds in no one's immediate eye line. We're just hopeful that we can get this through today. That's all really I've got to say. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Blair. Councillor Pinnock.
Thank you, Chair. I have to say that I'm very much in support of this application. I can in fact see this site from our house on the other. It's on a hillside, and so I can appreciate where the applicant is coming from, as it were, and the importance of ensuring that he's got a viable business. That's the most important thing, because this area of urban green space is really very important to people in Cleckheaton. We've already lost a bit of it at the top end, and various developers have been sniffing around at parts of it for many years, and I would want it to stay in its present state as urban green space and in use for agricultural purposes. That's the most important bit. Providing viable businesses for people who want to farm the land. There's only one issue that I'm a little bit concerned about, and that is that just a few yards away from this site there's been some stable blocks erected without planning permission, and enforcement action, I believe, is being taken to do something about that. Particularly if there was ever any suggestion that these stable blocks were used for livery. I don't know whether that was ever contemplated, but the thing is, the access to this site is down a very narrow lane with, at one point, high banks on both sides. So it's, well, what you might say, restricted access. But I expect the owner knows all about that anyway. The only thing I would be concerned about is there any intention to expand the use of the building that might make that access to be too narrow? And I think if I can have assurance on that point, otherwise I'm totally in favour of it. I think it would need a comment from the applicant, unless the planning officer knows this, that this is not likely to involve the expansion in terms of comings and goings onto the site.
Through you, Chair, we're not aware of any livery proposed use, and that doesn't fall under the definition for agriculture anyway. So if it was to change at a later date, then planning permission would be needed anyway. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, Chair. It's like I think other industrial old buildings, yeah, which are not suitable for the modern machinery and other materials. So these were already one or two has been collapsed, Yeah, other one might be not suitable for the modern machinery, and they need new one. No objection on that. But I'm little bit concerned about the material, especially the officer mentioned in there is a concrete panels. Are they usually use concrete panel on the farm building?
So through you, Chair. Yeah, the proposed materials were castle boarding and concrete panels for the walls and fibre cement sheets for the roof. In my experience, that's not particularly uncommon on agriculture buildings. As you say, they do kind of have industrial feel when they get to this scale, but it's not necessarily uncommon. But if members were minded to, we could always go away and look at the materials if that did tip the balance. Thank you, Chair.
Well, very rarely I've seen concrete panel on the farmhouses. Yeah. Anyway, otherwise, seen in the application, there are no objection from highway, another one call, or any other statutory body. No objection. I think I'm in favor of this application anyway, but only bit concerned about material. Yeah.
I know this area as well, coming from over there. I've got to say, I admire having a go at a farm in this day and age. I hope it all was all right for you, so I think you deserve a chance. I'm quite all right with it. I don't... You're moving it, Andrew. Right. Right. Moved and seconded, so we'll go to a vote.
So you're voting on approval of the application. Councillor Thompson.
For.
Councillor Davies.
For.
Councillor Sokol.
For.
Councillor Pattison.
For.
Councillor Pinnock.
For.
And Councillor Hall.
For.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Page 63, and it's Callum. And this time we're going over to Thornhill. This is another agricultural building.
Thank you, Chair. Callum Harrison again, Development Management East Team. Good afternoon, members. This application is for reference number 2022-91065 for the erection of an agricultural building at Mug Mill Farm in Thornhill, Dewsbury. A full planning application has been submitted both to Wakefield Council and Kirklees Council for the erection of the agricultural building. This is due to the application crossing into both authorities. In circumstances where application sites cross the administrative boundary of two local planning authorities, procedure states that two identical applications should be submitted, one to each local planning authority, seeking permission for the development falling within each administrative area. In this case, the part of the application site where the building is proposed lies within the administrative boundary of Wakefield Council, with only the vehicular access from Wood Lane within the administrative boundary of Kirklees Council. As you see on screen there, the administrative area for Wakefield is shown in orange, and for Kirklees it is in blue. Therefore, the majority of the site, including where the building is located, falls within the Wakefield Council area. The application fee is therefore paid solely to Wakefield, whereas Kirklees have not received any of that fee. In this event, Kirklees Council, one option available to Kirklees Council is to devolve its decision-making powers to Wakefield Council in respect of determination of any cross-boundary planning applications submitted to it. Wakefield Council, who have been paid the full application fee in any event, would then determine both the application submitted directly to it and the application initially submitted to Kirklees Council, but delegated to Wakefield. This is considered by officers to be the preferred option available to the Council, and therefore it is recommended that the members of the Strategic Planning Committee devolves its development control powers to Wakefield Council in respect of application 2022-91065 for full planning permission for the erection of an agricultural building. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Callum. I'll move it. Right, we'll go to a vote.
Sorry, who seconded?
Carol.
Thank you. So you're voting on approval of the recommendation to devolve functions to Wakefield Council. Councillor Thompson?
For.
Councillor Davies?
For.
Councillor Sokol?
For.
Councillor Pattison?
For.
Councillor Pinnock?
For.
Councillor Hall?
For.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Go. Right. Final item, we're on a position statement. This is Leeds Road, Huddersfield, Southgate, and it's Robert Hopkins, and altogether we've got 10 minutes for this item. Nick coming in. Is Nick here?
He's online.
Ah, right, Nick.
Yes, we can.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, as you said, this is Nicholas Hurst, Case Officer for the application. This application is a reserve matters, including all considerations of scale, appearance, layout, access and landscaping for the first phase of development on the site at Southgate. It is brought to members as a position statement to introduce a committee to the proposal and enable them to ask any questions at an early stage. I shall provide a brief overview to the proposal before handing over to the applicant to provide their own presentation. The site previously hosted the Huddersfield Leisure Centre and car park, which was demolished in 2016. It now hosts a temporary car park. Members may recall the parent outline planning application for the site, which was brought to committee in August 2021. The outline granted permission for the erection of a health and research innovation campus for the University of Huddersfield across the area shown in red on plan now. The outline established the principle of numerous uses on the site. These included education, healthcare, offices, research and development, a multi-storey car park, retail and the sale of foods, and sports and recreation. This image is the master plan that adjoined the outline application, which gave an indication of how the site would be developed out. The proposal is the first phase of the development relating to the land, which is shown in blue. It is to host plot 1, that is considered the landmark development of the site, which complies with the outline's master plan and represents approximately 20% of the whole site's land. This image shows proposed building from Southgate. The working name for the building is the Health and Wellbeing Academy and would provide approximately 10,000 square metres of floor space. In addition to teaching and lab space, it would host mock operating theatre and ambulances, mock dwelling, podiatry and orthotics clinic open to the public, offices and workspace for external partners to work in connection with the university. And this image shows the rear. And this is the block plan for the first phase. The building would be closely sited to Leeds Road to the north and Southgate to the west. To the east would be an area of open space leading into the rest of the outline area. Land levels within the site would slope down from west to east. I'll now hand over to the applicant to make their presentation, following which any comments or questions for either myself and the applicant are welcomed. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick. Right, Robert Hopkins. All set. I use my timer. 10 minutes from now.
Chair, actually it's myself, Tim Thornton. I'm the Deputy Vice-Chancellor at the University who will lead off. The grant of outline planning permission for the redevelopment of the Southgate site for up to 75,000 square metres of new health and education uses in October last year represented the first stage in delivering a major project bringing significant benefits to Huddersfield, to Kirklees and wider West Yorkshire communities and to the University. The University has moved quickly to prepare and submit the first phase of this wider scheme with the submission of reserved matters and condition discharge applications in April this year, subsequent to an architectural design competition. This first phase will bring forward a new 10,000 square metre health building within its own hard and soft landscaped context. Future phases will follow within the framework of an agreed master plan. The first phase building will deliver innovation and jobs, focusing research and knowledge transfer in fields like health tech. Student places. We are already the biggest provider of apprenticeships to the National Health Service in Yorkshire and the Humber, and the new building allows us to continue growth in these routes to skilled jobs for local people. And specific facilities in a growing clinic offer from podiatry to physiotherapy to occupational health and beyond, helping to improve health outcomes for the people of Kirklees and wider West Yorkshire communities. The building will also start to open up new connectivity and links between Southgate, Queensgate campus, the station and the stadium, supporting the Council's important initiative in this regard. The reserved matters and condition discharge applications represent the second stage in delivering a dramatic boost in skills, innovation, health and wellbeing and jobs growth in the district. I'm now going to hand over to Rob Hopkins of AHR.
Thanks very much, Tim. That's much appreciated. So just as a little bit of background from where we essentially became involved with this project, the original outline was submitted in April of last year. The design competition commenced in January, and then we were the successful architect in May. That outline was then determined in October with 2.67 hectares overall of the site and a consent for 75,000 square metres of development. Alongside the new building, we were also challenged to look at the overall master plan for the site, and we saw this as essentially piece of jigsaw number 7 for the Huddersfield blueprint, that it was similar in scale and at least as important as each of those parts of the blueprint. Absolutely intrinsic to that really was connectivity in terms of views down Northumberland Street. This will be one of the first buildings you see as you walk out of the train station. Connections through across Southgate from St Peter's, views along Leeds Road and then also around Old Leeds Road. So connectivity to the main campus for us was really, really important, and we saw the main campus and Southgate as these two anchors for the town centre. So we will use the town centre footfall moving from one site to the other. That'll be a really positive move for the town. In approaching the master plan, we set out these 5 considerations of walkability, of human dimension, sustainability, a built form that is of a scale commensurate with the town centre, and thinking what the future of campus might look like for universities. And so there's a series of master plan options, and essentially these have described a number of development sites, but not just focusing on buildings, but the spaces around those buildings, making sure we contribute green space, making sure we contribute sustainable space, and making sure we actually improve the town centre rather than make it any less strong. Thinking really closely about the sun path, making sure that we've got active buildings, active frontages, places that people want to go to. Thinking very carefully about how we phase this, and so developing along Leeds Road first, and so it really feels as though the town centre is developing first. The surface level car park being left there as long as possible when there's a justification to then introduce a sustainable transport hub. That comes at a later stage, and then those final pieces of the jigsaw replacing then the surface car park and those final development sites. And so very early on, the building has great, or the master plan has great impacts on the town. The building itself, as Tim said, is a community building as well as a university building. There's clinics in there, podiatry clinics, physiotherapy clinics, gait analysis. All of you will be using this facility in the town centre and the other buildings that get developed on this site as well. It's also a pioneering building. There's a world-class accreditation that's been set up called WELL Standard, and this links the human systems of the body into architecture and the built environment. This is the first time a university in the UK is pushing for platinum standard. The number of platinum buildings in the UK you can count on one hand, so this really is setting a world-class standard for architecture and what we should expect from buildings of the future. As was noted before, contributing to townscape is really important to us, and then landscape that goes with that. So an academic quad, a building that wraps itself around a protected green space, making sure that we have these pockets of greenery coming into the town centre, dealing with the level change, and then drawing you into the rest of the master plan. That landscape goes to the upper levels as well, so external spaces for students, for academics, facing towards the heart of the master plan. The building itself, it can be entered from the west, from the town centre, it can be entered from the east, from the rest of the master plan. All of that ground floor is public space, catering space, then a reception leading up to clinics on the left-hand side, and then academic spaces on the right-hand side. You can see here this idea of healthy dining, views into green space. Podiatry then up at first floor, lecture spaces on the right hand side at first floor. Again, learning on view, contributing to the town as much as possible. Physiotherapy then on second floor, more clinics given away to the public to create really authentic learning experiences for the students of Huddersfield. We've been to every university in the country looking at their facilities, and nothing comes close to the quality of what's being proposed here in terms of those facilities. They really are quite outstanding. Then, again, specialist spaces, mock operating theatres, mock wards. So, you know, the people that will learn in these facilities are going to get the very, very, very best standard of education in the UK in health and health outcomes. Space, a modest space for external partners then up at fourth floor. And again, this will be something that comes through in future developments, bringing partners into Huddersfield, bringing employment into Huddersfield around health and health outcomes. And then really incredible academic space up on the top 2 stories, perched above the top of the building. So a very kind of nice approach, simple building with stone to the right hand side, aluminium powder coating in bronze on the left hand side, opening up these lovely views of the things that go inside, gate analysis, active frontage down at street level, and then perched above that academic workplace. It's not just a building about day, it's about what it contributes at night as well. It really comes to life at night, inviting you in. The east side of the building is just as good, if not better, than the west side of the building, creating green space, a place where people actually want to be, not just as part of the university, but part of the town centre. So just to close off this really lovely aerial view shows clearly the current university campus in the centre, and then as your eye moves over to the left you see Crown House, and then the scale of what will be a really confident building, 6 stories with incredible views from Leeds Road and from Northumberland Street, and then contributing another piece of the jigsaw onto Southgate. Thank you.
I think this is something like 3rd or 4th building for university that I've been involved with over the years, and they just keep getting better and better. Fantastic that. Members, questions, comments? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, wonderful concept. Right avenue of training as far as physio and gait analysis, so I'm all for that. But with the risk of boring myself to death as well as everybody else, is I just want to mention one thing, and that's the cheap way of putting car parking in. Overground multi-storey car park, which seems to have become my pet hate at this moment in time, when we could bury cars and we could have more green space on top. So that's my only little bugbear with this project, as any other that comes in with multi-storey car parks. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I know this application is not for decision here, but I still welcome this development on this site, yeah, by the Huddersfield University, yeah. I got comments about, couple of comments about the chair. One is about the material. I know that on the 4-story block it says natural stone, but on the 6 or 7-story block will be not a natural stone, it will be cladding or some other material used, yeah? I don't know, is the right place? I know the Huddersfield University done a marvelous job in building, improving the Huddersfield University building over by the shorehead around, well, it would be like that, yeah. Chair, I got comments mainly about the people will be shuttling between the Queensgate University and the new place, yeah. I don't know how the pedestrian link would be improved by those people coming on are they coming through town or they coming on the ring road, yeah, Southgate, then into this new site. So another thing I want to ask is there any improvement of this junction traffic light junction on Northumberland Street and going to Leeds towards Leeds, yeah? Sometimes the people are just running around to cross the road there, so I need that, because I've seen at the moment for the last few years, current crossing at the old university into the Queen's Road on the traffic light. Again, the students are running around there when they get the chance traffic stop there. I think we need to improve the access on both sides between both universities. Thank you.
Chair, would you like me to pick that up as a question?
Yes.
Is that okay? Members, Ian Bath, I'm the university's planning advisor. Just picking up those couple of points. Natural stone will be sourced in Huddersfield as it is for all the developments that the university does. In terms of the improvements across the carriageway, they are already being undertaken by Kirklees Council Highways Department, and those works are underway. We're involved from the university's perspective in terms of diversion of drains. There is also a contribution as part of the outline to upgrade the Leeds Road bus stop on the southbound carriageway. So those improvements are part and parcel of what's coming forward.
Thanks, Chair. Actually, it was the access between the two sites, or the two main bits of the university, that I wanted to ask a question about as well. I think I heard what was said during the presentation was that the students would be encouraged to come through the town, which is great. I mean, I think that's really what we want to see. I do remember earlier, though, that there was also talk about access between the two sites along the canal bank, which, I mean, is also a good thing. I mean, if that's for... But I'm not quite sure how you will encourage students to actually come into the town and go out again, as opposed to, as Moan just talks about, going along the ring road. I mean, that is dangerous. We see it all the time, how students try to jump across the dual carriageway by Sainsbury's or near the roundabout. And I would certainly wish to see them coming into town and along, rather than doing that.
Sorry, again, Chair, would it be useful if I answered that or gave some information on that? Do you want? Yes, can do. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Sorry. Yeah, I mean, it's the conundrum that's really affected us from the outset of the project when you've got two sites that have some distance to get to. You know, the bottom line is that there will be regular sort of connectivity, and it's how we direct the students in that process. The university is currently doing a piece of work which we've entitled a movement study, which will set out, and there's some further information that needs to come into the case officer to demonstrate what we can actively do to encourage the movements in sensible directions. I think the canal is an option, but I don't think it will be a preferred option. Certainly through Northumberland Street, through the town centre, on to Queensgate, where improvement works are already being done as part of the initiatives that the council are doing, has to be the correct way to proceed, I think.
Paul?
Thanks. Yeah, well, really exciting, fantastic to hear from you today on the ambition that you've got on this site, and certainly for me, the design looks good, and I really do like this idea of creating these connections. I think that's key for us in Huddersfield, and you know, the cultural heart plans are about that, and creating those pathways through the town so that we don't have lost areas, and I think that's what we got at the moment. So I think that is fantastic. My question really, and again, is a fairly obvious one, I guess, but it comes to, you know, energy usage, efficiencies, and obviously the whole climate change agenda in terms of, you know, the thought processes around these buildings, and also linked to that, I'm not sure if this is a bit too far away from our plan, but whether there's been discussions around connecting to the district heating system that the council have been looking at, and have there been discussions around that as well? So really it's around that area. So, okay, thanks.
So yeah, thanks for that. So just to respond to the question around energy use and sustainability, when we completed Barbara Hepworth building, which is now two or 3 years ago, that was our energy measures that we've had over the last 2 years that have been normalised for full occupancy of the building show 45 kilowatts a square metre an hour a year of regulated energy. That sits beneath the net zero carbon target set by UK GBC of 65 kilowatts a square metre an hour a year for education buildings. So we're comfortably beating that at Barbara Hepworth. We've not got our final figures in yet, but we're looking to beat that again and to get even better. There's 200 square metres of PVs on the roof contributing to the reduction in energy demand on the building. We're a gas-free, it's an electric-only building, and so again that's an essential part of our considerations of looking to the future. And again, you know, if there are connections to a district heating system, we have some very, very strong technical people in the team that can actually look at that in good detail to see whether it is the best thing to do. My experience is that it can actually end up using more energy rather than less energy you've just always got to deal with it on a case by case basis. So watch this space, but we're aiming to be better than we delivered 2 years ago at Barbara Hepworth.
No? Right. We'll see you again shortly, no doubt. Right, thank you for coming. Look forward to this. Thank you. Right, everybody, pack up and go home now.